I have been receiving quite a few questions about how to start the fraction assignment. So I thought I would go over it quickly on YouTube because unfortunately I'm not in class today. So the first thing you need to do is download the starter code, which you can find on the assignment, fraction.java. And here we get a text file, so you can just copy this, Control, and go into BlueJ, make a new class called fraction. Delete all this and paste it in. Okay, so you're starting, what you start with here is a series of method stubs. And what a method stub is it contains the method signatures of what you're going to need to write, and then it includes just enough code to make sure that it compiles. See, if I compile it right now, I do not get an error. The fraction class compiles correctly. However, obviously it's complete. It's just returning dummy values, like get numerators, all is returning 0. It's not returning anything. The basic goal of the assignment is to write a class which contains a fraction and then is able to perform all the basic operations that you might want to perform on a fraction class. So the first thing to think about is what sort of information does a fraction class want to contain? Well, what is a fraction? Fraction is a whole number divided by another whole number. So we can store both of those in integers values. So I can say private int den for denominator. Let's put numerator up on top. Numerator. I have these two values. Okay, second thing, I need to write some of the constructors. So let's write this constructor together. This takes two parameters, a numerator and a denominator. And we are supposed to store this in our fraction. So I've called the variables the same thing, both the instance variables and the parameters the same thing. How do I differentiate between them? That's right, I use this keyword. This refers to the instantiating instance of the class, which means the instance variables up on top. So I can say this.num refers to this variable, and then I can assign that to num, and I can say this.den is assigned den. Okay, so this is a very simple constructor. You have two other constructors which you have to make. Notice one, you're receiving a fraction as a parameter. So in that case, you make sure that you're creating a new fraction and you're not simply just putting a reference to this f. Right, so we would want to have two different fractions that have the same value in this case. So going down here, we have two accessor methods. I think you guys are quite capable of doing both of them easily. Simply return the numerator, simply return the denominator. And then we have a toString method because it is very common that we would like to be able to print out our value of the fraction. So here you want to put something sensible. I would like to, usually when I print out a fraction, let's say I have 1 divided by 3, I'd want to print something like 1 divided by 3, right? So I need to create a string out of the denominator, and then the division sign, and then the numerator, the division sign, then the denominator. So I can do that like this. Something like that. We're going to test it. Oops, plus sign. Equality operator, I need to take, this is missing a term, fraction other. Remember, the equality operator checks whether the instantiating instance is equal to the other fraction. Now in the fraction case, that's pretty simple. We're simply going to check if both the fractions numerators are the same and both of the denominators are the same. That assumes that both fractions are properly simplified. Then we have an add fraction, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now these are a little bit trickier because notice the return type on each of these is a fraction. And that's a new fraction. So what you're doing is you're calculating the answer, and then you're creating a new fraction and storing that information in your new fraction and returning that. So let's do multiplication first, and we're not going to worry about simplification. Basically, our new fraction, let's create two temporary variables, method variables, numerator and denominator. The numerator is going to be equal to this dot num, which is the instantiating call of this fraction, times f dot num, and the denominator is going to be this dot denominator times d f dot denominator. So I'm simply storing the numerator as the product of the instantiated object numerator multiplied by the fraction that I'm calling this on. Okay, and then I need to create a new fraction with nd. And this new fraction, here, why don't we store this in a variable? Fraction rf for return fraction is going to be this. All right, so I've instantiated a new fraction, and then I need to return this fraction. So I think that makes sense. Division then becomes quite easy. We're simply multiplying by the reciprocal. Subtraction and addition, or addition you need to complete. Subtraction, you can simply add the negative value of the fraction to it. So you get to reuse your code. Now, you also have to write a simplify method. Simplify will take the a fraction. Simplify is actually the only mutator of the class, and it will. If you have a fraction like 2 divided by 4, you need to make it 1 divided by 2. So you should then, after you've written a simplify method, which you can look up an algorithm online, or you can write some sort of brute force algorithm. You can, once you've multiplied, you should then be simplifying your fraction. So I'm missing a line like rf dot simplify. Which I can do right now because at the moment simplify doesn't do anything. But I would be mutating the fraction to simplify it if it's needed. So let's, the final thing you need to do is you need to test each of your methods, and you should probably be doing this as you move along. Write one method and test it. You're supposed to ensure complete code coverage, which means that every single line of code that you write in the fraction class you should test at least once in your main method. So let's write a main method and let's test what we just wrote. Public static void main string args. So the first thing we wrote was we wrote this constructor here. So let's create a fraction. Fraction f is assigned new fraction 1/3. Sure. Okay. Let's compile. We can run it to make sure it runs without a issue. Run the main. Oops, there we are. Okay, no issue, but it does not surprisingly, it doesn't give us any output. So let's print it out because now we're testing our toString method. ToString that we wrote up here, and we expect to see 1/3. So compile. And here we see 1/3. I also want to flush the output before I print anything out. So let's put that at the top. Okay, now I would like to test my multiplication method. So we'll say fraction f2 is assigned new fraction, and we'll make it, I don't know, 3 fifths. Okay. So now we're going to use multiplication. So remember, we are returning a new fraction. So we'll say fraction f3 is assigned f1 dot multiply f2. I guess I called it f. Let's change this to f1 for consistency. And then I would like to see what this yields, so I'm going to print it out. Okay, so the first one is 1/3. The second one is 3/15, which is 1/3 times 3/5. Okay, so give it a shot. Try to write all the other fraction methods. Come with questions. The assignment won't be due until Monday of next week, or Tuesday rather, since we have class on Tuesday. So come to me with questions on Friday. Hopefully you're just about done with it, maybe stuck on the simplify method. See you guys on Friday.